Today, Hillary Clinton is slated to slam the Trump campaign's association with the execrable alt-right. She's released a brutal ad preparing the groundwork. And we'll show you that ad a little bit later. As one of the leading antagonists of the alt-right, there's some accuracy to the ad. She's right that Trump has winked at the alt-right, particularly in that awful Jake Tapper interview on CNN. She's also right that the new Trump campaign CEO, Steve Bannon, has called Breitbart a gathering spot for the alt-right. And she's also right that the alt-right is a movement that prizes white solidarity over any sort of real principle. But there are some serious problems with Hillary's ad. First, it implies that all of the Trump supporters are alt-righters, which is a slur, it is untrue, and it is a lie. Second, the ad also implies the alt-right is conservative, which is also untrue. Just ask anybody on the alt-right. But we do have to ask, what's driving Hillary to even raise the profile of the alt-right by attacking in a full speech, which she's supposed to do in a couple hours or so? Sure, it's typical Democratic politicking. After all, Joe Biden once said that Mitt Romney, the mildest man in the world, wanted to put black Americans back in chains. But it's a weird choice in an election that Hillary, by the polls, is winning handily. Unless, of course, it's a preliminary move toward what the alt-right likes to call no-platforming Trump. Hillary has been studiously avoiding a press conference for nearly a year now. She won't answer difficult questions. She's still leading by big margins in the key swing states, and everybody knows the only possible event that could change that math would be a series of really bad debates against Donald Trump. What if all of this is a precursor to her declaring she simply will not debate anyone associated with the alt-right? That it would be inappropriate to take seriously a guy whose campaign CEO has greenlit pieces praising the alt-right. The media would probably side with her. I mean, they always do, after whining about it for a little bit. Trump would fulminate that Hillary's afraid of him, and he'd be right, but he'd also look like a sore loser, a guy trailing and desperate. He'd become Ted Cruz in the last part of the primary campaign. You remember Ted Cruz in the last part of the primary campaign? He was trailing around Trump, saying he won't debate me because he's afraid, and he looked desperate. Well, that would be Trump now, furiously attempting to pin down Hillary so that he can fight her, and she'd give him the high hat. Well, perhaps that's not the agenda at all. Maybe this is all just a cynical play by Hillary to link conservatives with the alt-right, crippling them down the road. But it's not implausible to think we may be watching the groundwork for an election gambit that actually could seriously finish Donald Trump's chances at the presidency. I'm Ben Shapiro. This is The Ben Shapiro Show. Alrighty, so we begin by thanking a brand new sponsor. We have a brand new sponsor, Tracker.com. It's actually thetracker.com. This is the coolest thing ever. So if there is conflict in my marriage, it largely springs from the fact that I'm constantly losing my wallet and my keys. My wife is constantly losing her phone. Now that you're carrying around all these objects all the time, you tend to lose them. That's what the Tracker does. The Tracker makes losing things a thing of the past. It's a coin-sized device, really, really small. It's like 2 quarters stacked, and you attach it to anything like keys or wallets or bags or computers, and you pair it to your smartphone, you attach it to anything, and you can find the location with just the tap of a button. That's the entire deal with the Tracker. And what happens if you lose your phone? Well, then you press the button on the Tracker, from your keys, and your phone rings. Even if the phone is on silent, the phone rings. It overrides the don't ring feature of the phone, which is amazing. It's going to save me so much stress in my marriage. Seriously. They have over 1.5 million devices. They have the largest crowd GPS network in the world. So even if you left your device or your wallet a mile away, 6 miles away, it'll still show up. You don't have to lose anything ever again. Go to thetracker.com and you use promo code Ben. That helps keep everybody here in business. But tracker code Ben, it's thetracker.com. You get 30% off your entire order, which is really a fantastic deal. Again, this is a device that I've been using, and it is a terrific device, and I highly recommend it. It has saved a lot of stress in my marriage, and I assume that it will save more. Well, today we have so much to get to here on The Ben Shapiro Show. But we'll begin with my good friend Adam Carolla. So Adam Carolla stopped by yesterday. We had a chance to talk to him he's got a new movie that's coming out. It's a documentary about Paul Newman. We talked to him about that and about some of his other films and about what it's like to be a conservative in Hollywood, because he really is in Hollywood. Here's the interview that we did with Adam Carolla. And now joining us here on The Ben Shapiro Show is one of my favorite human beings and the funniest person that I've ever had the pleasure of sitting in a room with, Adam Carolla. Adam, of course, is the host of the world-famous Adam Carolla Show. The Pirate Ship is available at adamcarolla.com. Adam, thanks so much for joining the show.
Thanks, Ben. Appreciate it.
Yes, I wanted to have you on mainly because, number one, because it's always a pleasure to have you on, but second of all, because we're now working in a political system where it seems like the Republicans and Democrats are both completely out of touch with people, and you're as apolitical a political person as I know. And I sort of wanted to ask you about how that's been received. Obviously, you are mostly seen as a guy in comedy, but how's your audience received the fact that you're obviously more on sort of the conservative side of the aisle when it comes to personal responsibility?
Well, it's weird because I've been preaching personal responsibility since I began Loveline in 1996 when you were a zygote. So I'm an atheist who comes from the real world, and I grew up just real, not even blue collar, sort of beneath blue collar, and I just went to work. You know, I wasn't educated, and I didn't receive anything from the government or my parents or anyone else. I just realized that, hey, go to work. And I even realized early on, like, hey, don't have kids when you don't have insurance for your pickup truck. It probably would be a bad idea to have kids. And then eventually I got the Loveline, and I just sort of said, hey, if you can't afford kids, don't have kids. Because the government's not going to do a very good job of taking care of those kids. And you really have no business having kids if you're too poor to, I'd say, look, anyone who's using powdered milk, don't have kids. If you can't afford milk, you shouldn't have kids. And nobody said a word about it. Like, it wasn't considered a political notion. It was, the thing that's insane is that all this stuff has become politicized. For this country's existence, you have kids, you be responsible for those kids, you then pay for those kids, whether it's clothing, meals, schooling, education, whatever. That was somewhere between no duh and no S. Now it's turned into some sort of political notion, which is insane to me. And now, because I'm basically a guy who says, if you want to smoke pot, smoke pot. I'm not going to tell you whether to do that or not. And if you want to go to the beach and start a bonfire and roast marshmallows, go ahead and do that. Take out a flaming stick and throw it in another guy's camper. I've got a problem with you, but just go do your own thing. I've always just preached, don't hurt anybody, go do your own thing and be responsible. But somehow that's turned me into a conservative, which is bizarre.
One of the things I wanted to ask you, Adam, because you're friends with a lot of people who are still in mainstream Hollywood. Obviously, you have a lot of friends who are on late night TV. Jimmy Kimmel comes to mind. And a lot of the people you hang out with and are friends with are definitely on the left side of the aisle. I mean, they're folks who definitely, they raise money for Democrats. They like the Democratic Party. But they obviously have the same values you do when it comes to their own personal lives. They actually believe in personal responsibility and hard work. I mean, I've heard you talking about Kimmel and saying that he's one of the hardest working people you know. Why do you think there is that disconnect inside Hollywood with regard to people who basically live the lifestyle that you're talking about, the live and let live, but work hard and be responsible for your own stuff lifestyle, but then go back a bunch of policies that seem to disagree with that?
Well, I think part of it is some hypocrisy. Obviously, I don't know that it's an intentional hypocrisy with a lot of people that I know that I'm friends with that are very squarely Democratic. I think a lot of it is a few things. One, the Democrats have done a wonderful campaign. I mean, what I'm saying is this. My wife will buy Pantene shampoo, and I'll go, that's $12. I've seen all the reports. The stuff for $1.99 is exactly the same. And she'll go, this stuff is best for my hair. And I go, why? And she'll go, it's got Pro Nutria 5. And I'll go, they made that up. It's like they made up the word balsam. It doesn't exist. She'll go, I know this is the best, and you can't talk me out of it, and I'm buying another thing for $14. And I'll go, listen, I've seen every scientific study. The $1.99 stuff is exactly as good as the Pantene that just cost 5 times as much. And she'll go, I know what I know. So the Democrats have done a pretty wonderful campaign of convincing everybody that conservatives were bad people who wanted to, who hated minorities, who hated children, who wanted to see them go to bed hungry, who didn't care if they were fed or sheltered, who hated veterans, who hated the elderly, who hated anyone having access to birth control or medicine. And they've done it, and one could argue, like, one of the best Madison Avenue style pieces of advertising in terms of a campaign. And the folks in Hollywood want to be on the happy side of the ad campaign. And I get it. And also, they have to commingle. I mean, you have to have these people at your party, on your show, in your corner. I mean, nobody wants to be ostracized or blackballed. I mean, I've come up with 3 movies. One of them was called Sports Illustrated Best Sports Comedy of the Year, and is at 89% on Rotten Tomatoes. Certified fresh, 80%, 81% with top critics. I have a documentary about Paul Newman. It's 100% on Rotten Tomatoes and 94 with the people. I have another comedy called Road Hard. It's 75, 78% with the people on Rotten Tomatoes. None of them have been accepted into Sundance. None of them. Now, it would behoove me as a filmmaker to shut my mouth and get my documentary that's at 100% on Rotten Tomatoes on into Sundance with, by the way, Robert Redford is in this documentary. Sundance is named after his character that him and Paul Newman played, Butch and Sundance, have a legendary friendship, not accepted into Sundance. So, higher rated than any of the Oscar-nominated documentaries of the year it came out 2 years ago, not accepted to Sundance. So there is a business decision to be made here. And I'm not making the right one, but there's a business decision to be made, and it comes down to business in a lot of Hollywood.
Yeah, I mean, I was noticing that. I was looking at the Rotten Tomatoes rankings on all your films, and it seems like, you know, for example, Road Hard gets worse reviews than Ghostbusters, Female Ghostbusters, which may be one of the worst films ever made. And that's got to have something to do with the fact that the critics know who you are, as opposed to the critics knowing what Ghostbusters is about, because just on an objective level, any objective level, there is no way that Road Hard is a worse movie than Female Ghostbusters.
The thing is you check the people's rating on Road Hard and then check the critics. You'll see there's a nice chasm in there. The thing that's kind of interesting is my first movie I did, The Hammer, I did 10 years ago, and the critics weren't really on to me and my crazy notions about people feeding their own kids breakfast. This lunacy, this heresy that I speak of. So my first movie, which is another just nice romantic comedy, they were not really on to me. So you can see that there's not much of a gap between the people and the critic. Now you fast forward 10 years to the next movie and you'll see a larger gap.
Social circles, in your social circles, Adam, do you feel like, because obviously you still work in a lot of these social circles, do you feel like you've been ostracized by people? Do they look at you differently than they did 10 years ago? Or do they sort of just say, well, Adam was always Adam, he was always iconoclastic, and you know, that's just Adam being Adam?
The people who know me know who I am and how I've always been, and it's never been a mystery to them. It's the kind of thing where I have spoken to people like Tom Arnold, who saw this Newman documentary and was incensed that it wasn't at Sundance, and I told him to look into it a little, and he basically said, you're on kind of a list, and that list is kind of a no-fly list when it comes to this sort of stuff. I mean, again, if you look at the movie, you can always go, well, it's subjective. But if you look at a movie and it's 100% with the top critics, 90% with the regular critics, and 95% with the people, and the subject is about the best friend of the guy who started Sundance, and you don't get accepted into Sundance, one thinks, well, maybe there's some powers at play. For me, the first movie I did, The Hammer, the guy who ran Sundance simply stated, I don't like Adam Carolla. And so we're not letting him in. So, yes, there is an element of there's a price to pay for having the opinions that I share on a regular basis. But
yeah. Understood. So Adam's written a bunch of books. One of his books is President Me. So he started to forge into the political direction a little bit more openly than he used to. And I want to ask you your political advice from sort of a cultural side, Adam, because obviously I do political analysis for a living, but you're a cultural critic much more than I am because you live in that every day. And so I wanted to ask you, you mentioned the Republican branding and how the Republican branding sucks and how they've done a really poor job and the Democrats have done a much better job. You're an atheist libertarian, essentially. Do you think that the Republican Party would do better if they got off the sort of religious aspect and started moving, not telling their religious base to sit down and shut up, but more just saying, look, just get the government out of everything. One of the things that struck me about this election cycle is we basically have a Democrat running as a Democrat in Hillary, a Democrat running as a Republican in Trump, a Democrat running as a Libertarian in Gary Johnson, and a Democrat running as a Green Party member in Jill Stein. Like, at some point, do you think that there's the future for a kind of conservative/libertarian movement here? Because obviously you have a big crowd of people who agree with your basic premise, which is as long as you're not hurting anybody else, leave me alone.
Yeah, I think the problem is the Democrats have figured out as long as we say really nice things about this community and that community, then we'll get their votes. And we won't do anything for those communities. And the reason we won't do anything for those communities is because they can't do anything for those communities. There's nothing you can do. If the family's going to be fractured, if people aren't going to focus on education, there's really nothing you can do. There's no programs to fix. If it's broken, I always look at it is this, because I was a former contractor. Here's what I believe the Democrats say they're going to do. If your basement is leaky and it's taking on water every time it rains, the only way to really fix that basement properly is to excavate all the way around the outside of it and waterproof it from the outside. To patch it from the inside out doesn't work. It works a little bit, it works temporarily, but it doesn't fix the problem. And saying, more lunch programs, more computers for low income, more late night libraries are going to stay open later, more after school programs. It's all very good, but it's still patching from the inside. You really want to stop the basement from leaking, you got to go outside, and the outside's the family unit. You have to fix the family unit. That stops the water from coming in, only done from the outside. Everything else is temporary and a patch and doesn't really work. Everything the Democrats have been espousing for the last 50 years have just been inside patching. What the Republicans talk about is maybe we should talk about our inside patch job and try to win over more of these people who have 3 foot of water in their basement, but that's still more patching from the inside. Somebody, I don't know on what side, the Democrats shouldn't do it because they've already got it locked down, but some libertarian or somebody ought to just go, look, you want to fix the problem? We got to excavate the outside of the house, and people go, I don't want to hear that. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of earth. That's a lot of work. I don't want to do that. And you got to go, you want to fix the problem or don't you want to fix the problem?
Yep. Adam Carolla, not only the funniest guy in America, but also one of the most profound thinkers, which is amazing because that's not what Adam thinks of himself as, I think. But that is what he is nonetheless, because sometimes simple truth is not so simple in today's political environment. The Adam Carolla Show, you can check it out at adamcarolla.com. And, of course, his podcast is one of the most successful podcasts in American history. So check out the Adam Carolla podcast. Adam, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Ben.
Alrighty, so unfortunately that means that it's time to cut off the Facebook Live. We didn't even get to all the content about today, but you have to go to dailywire.com to subscribe. If you're watching Facebook Live or YouTube, become part of the mailbag. $8 a month means that you can join the mailbag, and also you can watch the rest of the show with this beautiful punum, and you can really, really enjoy yourself that way. But if you just want to listen to it later, go to iTunes or SoundCloud and download it. We are the largest conservative podcast in America, and we're so happy you can join us. Again, check us out at dailywire.com.